This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show. And this week's episode is about family. You know, we've done this from time to time here on the podcast where I bring on members of my family like my grandpa, my dad, my brothers, Andy and Neil. They've started this podcast with me, so of course they've been on a number of times. My little sister Megan, who's never been on the pod, but she is the best of us, and she'll make an appearance at some point. But today's episode is about my brother Joey. See, my brother Joey and I were about 4.5 years apart. He was born in September of 1990. I was born in February of 1986. So we're 4.5 years apart. So that's a little bit far enough in age where you're never really doing the same thing at the same time until essentially you're both adults. And I remember when Joey kind of stopped being my little brother, he was in high school and I was in college, and all of a sudden Joey was 6'4", left-handed, blonde hair, and I'm watching his games and he's doing all the same things that I did, right? He played point guard, I played point guard. He was a pitcher, I was a pitcher. He played 4 sports, I played 4 sports. But all of a sudden I'm watching my brother out there and he's playing all the same sports that I did, but he just did everything a little bit different than me because we were just totally different athletes. You know, I'm 5'10.5". I've probably got a little bit of short man syndrome. I was wound pretty tight. I tend to be pretty loud and attention seeking. Joey is kind of the exact opposite of that in many regards, but of course we're still brothers. Like, we still have so many similarities that we share. So it was always a treat for me to watch my brother Joey compete in sports because, like I said, he just saw things differently than I did, and he played sports differently than I did. And so that's a little bit about what today's episode is about. And, you know, I think it's natural for people, for kids to always, you know, you look up to your parents all the time. You know, you may not always want to emulate your parents. Luckily, I happen to be blessed with 2 very great parents who I still look up to, you know, not only when I was a kid, but still look up to today. But, and you always look up to your older sibling too. I had a great older brother in Andy who has always been a role model for me. But you never really look up to your younger siblings because they're younger than you, right? And so you're always who they're looking up to. But then all of a sudden, once you hit a certain stage of life, you start looking at your younger siblings differently, and you see them not as your little brother, your little sister, but as equals. And all of a sudden you start to admire them in a number of different ways. And that's kind of what happened with me and my younger siblings, where all of a sudden, once I got to a certain age, and probably I was mature enough to look them more as equals than as my younger siblings, but I start to admire my siblings in a totally different way. And my brothers Neil and Joey and my sister Megan, I admire them all in different ways. But since today's episode's about Joey, let's talk about Joey. Joey, like I said, he was a really successful high school athlete. He played 4 sports at St. Edmund and, you know, won a bunch of state championships there in track, in baseball, and, you know, really had a lot of accolades coming out of high school. He went to Iowa Central to play baseball after high school, just like I did. The only difference was, like I said earlier, he's a 6'4" lefty. I'm a 5'10.5" righty. So we were totally different guys. And frankly, he was a lot better than me, not only coming out of high school, but also at Iowa Central. So then after Iowa Central, Joey moves on to the Big 12. He was a pretty decent recruit coming out of Iowa Central. He goes to Kansas State in the Big 12, and he's essentially the number 1 starter for Kansas State in the Big 12 for 2 years, helping them win the Big 12 title his senior year, and they came within a play of the plate in the Super Regional against Oregon State from going to the College World Series in Omaha. And Joey was the ace of that really, really great Kansas State team. And I'll never forget watching him on ESPN pitch in Game 1 of the Super Regional. And Alex Cora, not Joey Cora, but Alex Cora, who's now the manager for the Boston Red Sox, is doing the color commentary for ESPN and doing the scouting report on my brother. And I'll never forget that. It was so cool to watch Joey's career and see him mature and grow up right in front of our eyes. And that was a really fun time for me as a brother and for our family. And after Kansas State, Joey went on to play professionally, played a couple of years with the Detroit Tigers in their minor league organization. And so he's never been on the podcast. We've had 220 episodes of this podcast. We've never had my brother Joe on. And frankly, he's a way better athlete than I am. So it's time to bring him back into the fold. The prodigal brother returns. And even though, this is kind of a family episode, I do think you guys will enjoy it just because we're covering a lot of bases here. We're talking about sandlot baseball. We're talking about high school sports. We're talking about big-time college athletics. And the way Joey sees sports and competition is a little bit different than the way I see it. And that's, it goes back to us being brothers in the same in so many ways, and also us just looking at things from a different perspective. And so I think you guys will enjoy this side of things. I think you'll enjoy hearing from my brother Joey. Obviously, Neil makes an appearance in the episode. Andy was in the room, but I don't think he spoke on the mic. My dad makes a late appearance. My grandpa came into the room at one time with a trivia question towards the end. So enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter Joe Flattery. All right, I'm sitting in my parents' porch in Fort Dodge, Iowa. I'm surrounded by my 4 siblings, and our moonlighter for today is my brother Joe Flattery. He now goes by Joe. Once he moved out of Fort Dodge, he changed his name from Joey to Joe. And so the purpose of today's episode is so many people throughout the years of the pod have always said, why is Joey never on the podcast? Neil's been on the pod, Andy's been on the pod, but brother Joe has never been on. So today we're bringing Joe back into the fold as the prodigal brother. Joey, welcome to the Moonlight Graham Show.
Thank you, Tim. It's been 4 years, I think, since you texted me to get on.
Yeah, it's taken a long time. You got 2 daughters. You live down in Kansas, so it's been a long time before we've been able to get this to work. And our co-hosts for today are, of course, Neil and Andy, who have been on the pod so many times. Neil, you got the mic right now. How do you think this is going to go?
Well, I think it's going to go well. Tim called me in because I'm one of the resident Joey experts in the family.
That's right.
So I should have a lot to add.
So my first thing, Joey, is when Andy and I were growing up here in Fort Dodge, we had a pretty good group of friends, and we had a pretty good sandlot baseball group that we would get together. We'd ride our bikes to Cooper School. We'd play sandlot baseball. But then when you guys were young, I feel like you took it up even a step past us, where you guys had this mini baseball game that you would play over at our cousin Jonathan and Anthony's house. And, Neil, Joey, but explain to me this mini baseball game, because as an older sibling, I was jealous of what you guys had for your sandlot baseball growing up.
Yeah, it was like a backyard wiffle ball setup that we had, and we involved tennis balls and plastic bats, and I think the key to that game is we always tried to never get a good bat, because then you'd hit it over the house, so we're always looking for a dead bat to use for mini baseball.
So who invented mini baseball?
I think it just came out of necessity. We were looking to play somewhere close, and it's just, why not your backyard?
And it was one of those things where if you want to play a real baseball game with balls, you almost need 18 guys. And it was hard to get that set up, and it's hard to get that consistently too. So this game could be played 3-on-3, 4-on-4, or sometimes it would be 3-on-3 with an all-time offense guy or something like that. And he had all these different combinations of kids who would play in the neighborhood.
Yeah, sometimes our Uncle Terry would pitch the whole time or something. Like
yeah,
that.
What was the rotating cast of characters? You don't have to name all the names because a lot of them were, cousins and brothers and stuff. But how many guys were in the mix for mini baseball?
There were 6 official players.
Right, and every game had to have a certain amount of official players to be counted as official game. Because one of the things that would happen would be David would get all his friends over, and he wouldn't invite any of us, and then he'd kind of pad his stats. And so then it'd be well, David is an official player, but then he would need to bring in Neil and Anthony as co-official players to make that game official. to be counted in the record books.
Yeah, that's the big thing here is there were record books, and you guys kept stats for every game. And I think this might be the most fun part about this is some people like play the like MLB The Show, and they're keeping their stats and they're doing their dynasties. But you guys were doing this in real life. Who was keeping the book?
Neil.
Well, no, everyone kept their own stats. And I mean, and what would happen would be there'd be a whiteboard set up, a marker board set up in Terry and Jean's entryway into their house. And after every game, you would update your stats, and you'd put how many home runs you had, how many catches, because you'd play just with tennis balls and bare hands. How many, and if you won or lost. So basically, wins, losses, catches, and home runs.
How long did it take to get the rules ironed out for mini baseball?
I think more of it got fleshed out as well. You guys kept playing even after John and I retired. Because
did you have a retirement ceremony?
Well, no. Well, what I will say,
well, kind of.
I'm John Flattery and I played a mini baseball game, and then we also played a high school game that same night. So I do know that we were the only players to both hit home runs in mini baseball and a high school game the same day.
Still in history.
Still in history.
Yeah.
So that maybe hints at how old we were when we were still playing mini baseball in the backyard.
Well, I think what would happen was once you started playing high school baseball, you officially retired. So you may have played,
but you probably created that rule after Joey.
So you hit 8th grade, and you would retire. And then you could be up for election into the Shed of Fame, which your name would be remembered in Terry and Jean's shed in their backyard as the Shed of Fame. And I think their inaugural entries into the Shed of Fame were John, Joey, Billy Mann,
Patrick,
and Patrick maybe. Yeah. Those might have been the first entrance into the show.
Brian Sandvig got in there too.
How many summers in a row were you guys playing mini baseball? Neil, you probably had the most games played in history.
Wait, one year I had the most games played, and I didn't even live at the house. I can't remember. Would it have been 4 years? 4 or 5 years?
I think I played for at least 4 years, and you guys probably played for longer than that. I don't know.
I can't remember. We have a book. We have a book that we'd have to look at.
Yeah, you made it into a website, and all the stats were on the website. And that once I think cousin Anthony, stopped paying for the website, he turned it into a book. So all the web pages are now printed out in book form.
Right.
Yeah. Anthony has to have the lion's share of the credit for everything because he created the website.
He was the commissioner.
He was basically the commissioner. He hit the most home runs by far. He even created like an early conception of war based on the we call it the MBL, mini baseball league, the MBL, and he had like the MBL percentage, which is basically an early
win shares type thing.
Win shares, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to start with that because it was always so cool. Like Andy and I, we'd ride our bikes to Cooper School. And we had a group of 8 to 10 kids playing there, but it was always like the ball would get too far away or 4-on-4 at a big field. Never really worked right. And we never made it to the next step of creating our own version of mini baseball like you guys did. So I was always a little bit jealous of that. But Joey, we're here to talk about your career. So you talked about
that's how it started.
Was mini baseball. But right after that, you were playing mini baseball, and then you were playing varsity baseball really quickly as like a freshman, and being one of the main guys on the team as a freshman in high school on the baseball team. But when did you know that you were going to be a pretty good athlete?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I would say. I would say my freshman year, starting as a freshman and in 8th grade, I kind of had an idea that baseball, was easy.
Yeah, I mean, because you were always one of those guys that just picked up things quickly. Yeah. I think more so than maybe the rest of us brothers is like you kind of picked up things pretty easily. It seemed like from an athletic standpoint, but then when you got to be later in high school.
I should clarify, maybe YMCA basketball. that's when you kind of figure out.
Yeah, you know who the good athletes are,
yeah.
but you don't really know how good you are until you kind of hit varsity level. But when you were later on in your high school years, all of a sudden Neil came onto the scene and started pushing you. And I remember particularly like a Drake relays where I think you're a senior and Neil is a freshman, right? Would that be the years, right?
Yep.
Neil's a freshman, and all of a sudden you're a little high on the hog a little bit. You think you're the man, and Neil runs a better 800 than you in the 4x8 at Drake. What was that like to get outperformed in the 4x8 by your little brother after you think you're the man?
I mean, it was tough. Didn't like, and I don't think it happened again for the rest of the year. But
was it a wake up call for you?
Oh yeah, it was a wake up call. I think we were just done with basketball, and Neil had been
playing basketball too, though.
That's true.
Well, I had started running track earlier on than you guys, though, too, because
freshman basketball ended.
You didn't go to the
freshman
state
basketball
tournament.
ended, and so I started running at like all the indoor meets and all that stuff. Whereas you guys probably didn't peak till later on in the season, maybe towards the state meet.
Yeah, that's my excuse.
Neil, what was that like for you when Joey's a senior and you're trying to beat him? Like, even though he's your brother, you still want to beat him.
Yeah, it was one of those things, though, where, I remember, I think Coach Kibbe and Coach Murphy, they purposely never ran Joey and I in the open 800 because, I don't know, they never wanted two brothers to run against each other in the open 800. But I ran against Patrick a couple times, I remember.
Did you beat him?
In the open 800. And it was one of those things where even though, Patrick always beat me because there was still something that he would have had. He was stronger than I was at the time. So, like, if I ran a great race, like maybe in a 4x8, I got this put in a good position, I could run a faster time. But there's still like something that they had that they could outkick me at the end.
There's a psychological thing.
Psychological thing, maybe.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So, Joey, you're one of these guys that it seemed like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I was always so driven by sports, and I always loved sports just from that's all I can think about of my childhood is how much I cared about it. And my perspective on you was that you were always good at sports, but you didn't really dream about sports or obsess over them in the way that I do. And maybe I'm wrong by that, but that was just my perception. And what was your perspective on like wanting to be a good athlete when you were a kid?
Well, I think I like the recognition of sports.
Who doesn't?
Like that was always a motivating factor, was to get your name in the paper, to get recognized for something. And I think that's what that was always my goal. Like, if I didn't, I always wanted to do something that where I thought like that's going to make a good story, or that's going to, like I like the entertainment aspect of sports. So in basketball, like, trying to do a behind the back pass because you'd get the crowd to, something like that.
Or dunking it.
Yeah, that's important to me.
You at Iowa Falls one time tried to dunk it twice and lost the ball over the backboard twice.
Right. That's the only thing you remember from that game. So I think my point is proven.
Did you guys win that game?
Yeah, we were there. Iowa Falls was good, and I think we kind of pulled it off. We were pulled away from them towards the end, and I tried dunking it.
Yeah, but like most people would be so afraid of Coach K benching them that they would never attempt something like that. And then you tried it twice.
I tried it more than twice that year. I was 1 for 5, I think, in dunks in high school.
But where'd you get the nerve to do that? Like, why weren't you afraid of Coach K?
I think Coach K and O'Rourke kind of encouraged. They wanted me to. I know O'Rourke wanted me to try to dunk it.
Uh-huh.
And so he made me, like during like the layup drill during practice, he made me dunk during practice a couple times.
I think something happened after there was that incident with Mitch Kniffel in 2006 where he dunked it, missed it, and then Coach K freaked out and benched Mitch Kniffel after that. I think Coach K kind of felt bad about how that went down, and so he tried to change his image on that going forward. Where like, I'm okay if you're trying to dunk it now. I remember him even saying to us, like, if any of you guys want to dunk it, just go ahead.
Well, every good St. Ed's team has had a guy that dunked it that year. So Bargfree dunked it when they won state. Nick Sandvik dunked it.
Yep.
Josh
Bradley.
Bradley had a couple dunks their year. Nagel dunked it his senior year, and then I had to get my dunk in for my year.
Did Bozo Ivankovic ever dunk it, Neil?
He dunked in practice once.
So like we said, every great Gales teams, but not Neil's teams.
had somebody that would dunk it that year.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory. I've never thought of it as like every great Gale team had to have at least one dunk.
That's what I would think about, that kind of thing.
Did you do a behind the back pass in a game then?
Oh, I'd stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
You try to do something entertaining.
For a guy that cares more about dunking and behind the back passes in mini baseball than like getting your coach mad at him, you were always a pretty clutch player. Like you performed really well at state basketball, state baseball when you guys won it there. You did really well. State track, you always showed up at the when you needed to. Maybe it was like you never got too afraid of the moment. Did you get the same nerves? Like I know Neil and myself and Andy, we'd get really, really nervous. Did you get those same nerves?
I did, but I feel like there's only a limit of how nervous you can get. And I feel like I had a low nerve threshold. Fast forwarding a bit, but when I started the super regional game against Oregon State, my senior year in college, I remember getting done with my bullpen before the game and thinking, wow, I'm really nervous to start this game. But then I thought, I was also nervous starting at Eagle Grove my sophomore year.
Right.
And I remember thinking that's kind of how I feel like that. I feel like I'm back in high school at Eagle, like starting a game as a freshman. So I don't know, there's only a certain...
If you're nervous as a sophomore in high school, maybe your first varsity game or something, that's only as nervous as you can get.
Yeah.
You can't get more nervous than that. So then when you feel it again, you've already felt it once.
Right.
And now you're ready for it.
Yeah, you got to clear the mechanism and think, okay, I've done this 1,000 times.
So you were pretty clutch. I'm saying that, but there was one play that I thought was pretty unclutch of you that I thought you were going to make that you didn't, and it was in football against Ed Thomas at the Sacred Acre, Appleton Parkersburg. Really one of the best St. Ed's football games I've ever watched, and it was a high scoring game. You guys had a really great football team, back and forth game. The last game Ed Thomas ever coached at the Sacred Acre. And there was a pass into the end zone that I think you had to dive for, went right over your shoulders, and you had to dive for it, but it hit your hands and you didn't catch it. Do you remember that play?
Yeah, it was. I mean, the ball was right there, and I just missed it, and I would have scored and gone to the end zone, and we would have probably, it would change the game. But it's the only play in sports that really haunts me. Is that one? Is that missed catch in football? Everything else, I feel like I don't think about too much. But.
Well, it's funny because that's the one I think about you from your career. I was standing right there on the sidelines at the goal line, and it was a tough. It would have been a great catch. It would have been a tough catch, but it was also a catch that like you've made before.
Yeah, I think I had about 150 yards receiving that game, and that's all I remember is missing that ball.
Where do you think your grade or group of athletes at St. Ed's ranks in the all-time athlete ranks? Because I think the run of athletes at St. Ed's from Neil's class back to 2006, that group of guys, I think that's the best run. What is that, like 6 years maybe? Mm-hmm. That 6-year run is the best run of athletes St. Ed's has ever seen. But your group in particular, your class, where do you think it ranks?
Oh, I don't know. I think I think we maybe had the best 5 athletes in a class, but I think like 06 would have the best 10.
Ooh, that's an interesting way to put it.
I don't know. I mean, we had maybe 6 or 7 guys that played college sports after.
Yeah,
and I don't know.
The way you cap your St. Edmund career was with a state baseball championship. You guys won all sorts of state titles in track. You win the state baseball team title. You go to state in basketball. You really have a great high school career, not only as an individual, but your whole group had a really, really good run there. You cap it off with a state baseball over Dyersville Beckman in 2009, and then you get your picture in Sports Illustrated. in the faces in the crowd. Was there any notoriety for that?
Oh, I don't know. It was just a small little blip, but I had a couple people message me on Facebook, and that's about all that came out of this Flattery lady in Florida messaged me and asked who I was related to.
It's kind of a shame that Sports Illustrated no longer exists, because that was a thing. That was a really big thing in 2009, and now I don't think anybody really, like, it doesn't register on anybody's radar.
Yeah, I think somebody from the Des Moines Register nominated me for that.
I think it might have been Pratt.
Was it maybe Pratt that did that?
Yeah, I think it was Eric Pratt here locally.
I don't know.
But anyway, you go to college then, and you start out at Iowa Central, and all of a sudden, you go from playing 4 sports all year round to having to just focus on baseball. Not only that, but focus on baseball just as a pitcher. Mm-hmm. You're no longer hitting.
Yeah, it
had to be a tough transition.
I didn't like it because it didn't feel like it felt like a different sport rather than hitting was my favorite part of baseball. Pitching was okay, but there's a lot of pressure on a pitcher.
Yeah,
and less on a hitter. So I remember Coach P said that, he's like, you're 6'4", you're left-handed. I think you should really focus on pitching. And he was right. But, I ended my high school career really on a high note for hitting. And so I never kind of got like your coming to Jesus moment as far as, ending your hitting.
Yeah, you never got humbled by college pitching.
No, I never got humbled by college pitching. So, it always sitting on the bench, seeing your team not hit.
Well, and your cousin John was such a good hitter.
Yeah, my
at
cousin
Iowa
John was hitting.
And you always kind of thought, like, I'm just as good as John.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Your time at Iowa Central, then, that was the last Iowa Central team to make the College World Series. So you had a good run there. You didn't win the Junior College World Series, but once again, kind of going back to my clutch point, you threw really well at the JUCO World Series and got a win there.
Right. It wasn't like we needed hitting when I came in. So there was a great squad at Iowa Central, and so yeah, I mean, I would have just been taking the place of another good hitter, but yeah, we ended up making the College World Series, and a kind of a funny story about that is the weekend before the postseason, we got swept by DMAC, and I know we've talked about that with
Scott Shebler.
with Scott Shebler, but DMAC had the best team in the conference that year by far, and they beat us like 10-0 through the weekend.
That was about as bad as you've ever been hit that weekend.
It was bad, and that's when Dad told me after that. He said, "Why didn't you throw any knockdown pitches?" Because I think DMAC at one point hit three home runs off me in an inning. The wind
to start the game.
The wind was blowing straight out.
Yeah,
but that's been covered already.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah, but I remember after that game, Dad's like, "Why don't you throw it, guys?" Like, I think Dad was mad, obviously, but he said that's when guys are digging in the box, you throw knockdown pitches. And I'm like, okay, Dad, thanks for telling me now. But
the next time Shebler came up to the plate, you should have thrown one at him.
I'm not going to know.
So, I mean, Dad says that to you, but did that change your approach on the mound then, with trying to get inside on guys more and be a little bit more intimidating, or?
Yeah, it kind of, well, so the great thing about getting knocked around is it takes all the nerves. You have nothing to lose.
Right.
Because now you're the underdog.
You've been embarrassed.
Yeah, you've been embarrassed. So, and those games don't matter, once you reach the postseason. But I remember Coach Peterson ran he ran on the Friday. We had the game on. The games are on Saturday, and on Friday, he just ran the team for an hour, like everybody. I remember guys were throwing up. I think our second baseman fumbled the ball, and P just snapped, and it was intentional. I think he was planning to do that going into practice. He wanted just to. Can you maybe can elaborate?
Yeah, he did the exact same thing when we went to the Junior College World Series in 2006. He ran us not to the ground, but he ran us really hard in our last practice for the JUCO World Series. as a way to set the tone.
And I remember running, and I'm like, this guy is nuts. Like, why is he like that second baseman did not make a bad play, but in hindsight, it's like, oh, okay, he was actually trying to.
Well, it worked for you guys because you started there, and then you threw really well, and you guys played pretty well.
Oh, we played really well. We had no trouble. DMAC ended up not hitting at all, and they got beat. And we played really well then. I mean, it worked. Whatever psychology, whatever P was doing worked.
What was your recruiting like out of Iowa Central?
So Rick Peterson, after the season, we ended up getting 4th in the World Series. He said, where do you want to go? He said, just name the colleges and I'll send out emails. So I told him I liked somewhere close, somewhere I can drive to. So he I told him Iowa, Minnesota, Creighton, and then he said, well, what about Kansas State? I got somebody that I know at Kansas State. So I said, yeah, sure, Kansas State, Big 12. And he sent out emails, and about a week later I started getting calls from these colleges. And one call was from Andy Sawyers.
Yeah. And
Andy Sawyers was a contact that Rick Peterson had from Nebraska. And he's the guy that recruited
Brett Jensen in Nebraska.
So Sawyers told Dad and I when we came and visited Kansas State that he said Peterson's only given me a couple names. He said one was Brett Jensen, and
Justin
Sokol, and another guy was Dan Lyons. And he said I missed out on. He said I really wish I would have gone harder for Dan Lyons. And he said, so we'd really like you because we respect Coach Peterson. Yeah, so we ended up visiting Kansas State, and I think in Indiana State too was the other college we were considering.
Yeah, when Rick Heller was at Indiana State,
and that was hard though because Indiana State was a little far, but we really liked Heller, and I think it'd be a different story now if Heller at Iowa, but anyways, Kansas State was great, and Sawyers and those guys knew what they were, and Kansas State was. Had a good program at that time.
Your transition from high school to junior college went really smoothly, like a lot more so than mine. Like it took me a little bit to get used to the junior college competition, and it took me maybe about half of a season at my freshman year at Iowa Central before I really figured out how to compete. Mm-hmm. You transitioned a lot easier than I did, partly because you were better than I was, but then you jumped up, like I played in Missouri Valley, but then you play in the Big 12, which is a level up. And it felt like you had to probably make a bigger leap after junior college to the Big 12. What was that transition like for you? Where all of a sudden you're facing guys that are going to be playing in the major leagues, and it's some of the best baseball in the country.
Right. So it was certainly a big leap, and it took me a while, or it took me a second to figure out that nobody really knows I'm from a junior college and played 2A baseball in Iowa. Everybody kind of thinks I'm a Big 12 starter. And I remember like realizing, okay, nobody cares where I'm from. They just only care I'm playing for Kansas State, and I'm a tall left-handed pitcher, so I must be good. So I kind of had to own that mindset of being
like being a guy. Like you're expected to be a weekend starter in the Big 12. Right. So you got to act like it.
I got to act like it, and I can't think about that. Oh, I'm only coming from small town Iowa, and haven't really. I didn't really play too much baseball because I played 4 sports in high school.
Yeah, that's right. Like a lot of guys around the country, when you get to Division I baseball, they've only played baseball their whole lives. They're from Texas, Florida, Louisiana, California.
Right. They've been doing the AAU traveling circuit forever.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you go from junior college to Division I, big-time Division I programs are only recruiting out of junior college guys that can come in and be a starter for them right away.
Right. We're a filler. We can fill a need.
Yeah.
And K-State's kind of left-handed weekend starter got drafted the year before, so I was coming. They wanted me to replace him, their Saturday lefty guy, and so I didn't think I had a good fall. And I remember my pitching coach telling me, like after the fall practices, saying, "No, you're going to be our Saturday guy." He's like, "Don't think you had a bad fall. Like you have good stuff. You're going to be our Saturday guy." And I remember thinking, "Oh, okay." And that put me at ease.
one of your first Big 12 starts was against Texas A&M, back before A&M was in the SEC. And I had no idea. I'd always heard A&M was a great college baseball place, but I never really saw it until you pitched there. Mm-hmm. And what happens is the crowd is really, really into it. This Texas A&M crowd is really into it. And if you're not throwing strikes, they're counting the amount of balls that you throw in a row back to you as you're throwing it. And this happened to you. Not a great outing.
Not a bad outing, but it was a wake up call. Like, wow, this is big time. This is big time baseball. So it was only my second or third start of the year where we go down to Texas and play A&M, and I'm starting Saturday, and A&M's Friday night guy is
Michael
Waka, who would be pitching in the playoffs for the Cardinals, a few months later. And so we get beat the Friday night game, and I start the Saturday, and it's against Stripling,
Ross Stripling,
who's still pitching in the bigs now. So it's me against Stripling, and it's the A&M Park is it's a AAA park.
It's beautiful.
It's a
brick,
gorgeous,
beautiful park.
There's thousands of people there, and you walk a guy on four strikes, and all of a sudden the crowd stands up. And they start chanting ball 4 and then ball 5, ball 6, after each pitch. And it
got to ball 12.
I don't know.
It got to double digits, I think.
I don't think it got.
Well, for me watching it, it felt like a million balls.
It did on other guys at K-State had. Yeah, and it's an awesome tradition that they have.
Did it make you nervous?
Oh yeah, I was very nervous.
Yeah, because
I was a bit more nervous than starting out in my freshman year in high school.
Yeah, because you rarely have big crowds in college baseball. Right. Most time it's 300 people are at the game. They're sitting in lawn chairs in the outfield, that kind of thing. But this crowd, we're watching it. We're streaming it, I remember at the time. And it was oh, man, that looks like a packed minor league stadium.
Yeah. Yeah, every Texas stadium is a AAA park.
The thing about Kansas State is they don't have a great tradition of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
But Brad Hill as the head coach, Josh Reynolds as the pitching coach that year, your senior year, and you're the ace of the staff, you guys kind of catch fire. And everything goes right for you that year.
Yeah, we had a good – so my junior year was not – it was a little disappointing. It was the first time Kansas State had not made the postseason in 3 years, I think. But come back our senior year,
and you lost some guys your junior year.
Yeah, we lost some guys. We had a good senior class,
right?
But you don't win a couple games, and all of a sudden things get tight, and you can't. But my senior year, we started out, we won some games early on, and that kind of makes things fun. And all of a sudden we start winning those one run games, have a couple comebackers, and then you get confident, and we had some freshman guys who came in and they didn't know they were freshmen, and they just thought this is
how it goes.
This is how it goes. And so they started playing well, and it just seemed like everybody kind of stepped up that year when they needed to, especially on the pitching staff. The hitters we had a good hitting squad, but the pitching staff, we were throwing guys out there, and they were doing their job when they had to. And
that year, Ross Kivett,
mm-hmm.
and if you're listening at home, Ross Kivett, you might recognize that name because for Tennessee this year in the College World Series, he was the assistant coach that got thrown out of the College World Series as an assistant coach this year. But him that year for you guys might have been the best second baseman, top of the order guy in the country. He was unbelievable that year.
Yeah, him and we had him. He was the Big 12 Player of the Year that year, and our left fielder was named Tanner Witt.
Yeah.
And both those guys were competitors and hot-headed. And I remember them getting in a fight in the fall earlier. They didn't like it. I don't think they liked each other going into that year, but they were both. They're both guys you would want to, you want to go to battle with because they're just, they're competitive. And yeah, it just seemed like Kivett would just, anytime he needed to, Kivett would just step in there, and Witt too and they would get hits.
And it was such a fun team to follow because you always knew, even if you're down 3-0, 4-0, that team was going to come back.
Yeah.
You guys were ranked, in the top 25 for the most of that year. You're at the top of the Big 12. It was really fun. And you're the ace of that staff. And most number ones for top 15, top 25 programs, they're like first-round draft picks or second-round draft picks.
Right.
And you were every bit as good as them on a certain day, but you just didn't have you weren't throwing 100 miles an hour. Jonathan Gray for Oklahoma was throwing 101 miles an hour. He was like the number one pick in the draft, and you were going up against that guy.
And I beat him.
Yeah, and you beat him. What was that like when you know that guy is going to be a top 2-round draft pick, but I'm going to beat him tonight, and I have to pitch against him tonight? What was your mindset like?
Yeah, it's you don't think about it. Like you're facing Max Muncy, and you just don't. You can't think about who this guy is, or Michael Conforto, like some of those guys I threw against that year, and it's just if you start thinking about who you're facing or where this guy's going to be, that's when you're already beat.
One thing that really led to your success at Kansas State is you were never like a fireballer, but you did throw, 90-91 is kind of where you'd be at. But then your curveball got really good. And you had really a plus breaking ball that really helped you out, not mostly against righties too, but lefties as well. But the righties didn't hit it all that well. When did the curveball start clicking for you? Because it wasn't something that was like your best pitch in high school.
Oh, the curveball was always clicking.
I don't know about that.
I always had a good curveball.
Your curveball, I felt, got a lot better in college.
Oh, I don't know. I think what I was doing well at Kansas State was a two seam and changeup. That's what I always.
But the curveball is your out pitch.
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe my scouting report's wrong, but I remember the curveball.
Well, speaking of scouting reports, I remember so back to the A&M start. This is I didn't know anybody knew anything about me because I came from a junior college. But after starting at A&M, I lifted in their weight room on Sunday. And so I did a Sunday workout, and A&M had their scouting report on a whiteboard in their weight room. And it had my scouting report on there.
What did it say?
I can't remember.
How do you not remember?
It wasn't good, but it was. But I remember thinking, how do these guys have a scouting report on me? I've never started a college D1, but they somehow knew. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's Texas A&M.
Yeah, it's Texas A&M.
They're good for a reason.
But I just thought that was.
So your senior year, going back to that year though, the most nervous, maybe as a fan I've ever been, and maybe Neil, you can re-enter the conversation here, is you guys are looking to clinch the Big 12 title against Oklahoma. And do I have this right?
No. We clinched the Big 12 title on Friday. I didn't start the Friday game.
No. But that next game...
The next game was clinching the super regional slot.
That's right. It was clinching a seed, a top seed.
I think we clinched a share of the Big 12 title on Friday.
You clinched the outright title on Saturday, and the game that you started.
And then the Saturday game was clinching the outright title plus a
national seed.
A national seed.
A national seed. Right. And that was the game. I remember, Neil, we were all there as a family watching that game, and I don't know if I've ever been more nervous for anything in my life than maybe the hour or two before that game.
No, we've talked about this before, but it's unlike being a fan of any other sport. Watching Joey pitch, it was, like I've never been more nervous. Like we talked about having a low nerve threshold. That was peak nerve threshold for me. I think watching Joey pitch, every single pitch we're hanging on.
I remember I almost had to throw up. Like I was so nervous watching that game. And the funny thing was, you threw great. I think you had like a no-hitter through 4, and then maybe gave up your first hit in the 5th, but threw like six shutout, if I remember correctly. And then you guys beat Oklahoma like 8-0, no problem.
Yeah. And if a player behind you made a bad play on a ball, we would just hate them so
We'd
much.
hate them.
But if they made a great play, then we loved them so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't too nervous. I don't think anybody was. We stayed out pretty late after the Friday game because we had clinched the Big 12 chair of the Big 12 title. So I remember being out to about 2 or 3 in the morning and thinking I got to be at the field tomorrow at 10 and starting a game. So
Yeah.
So it was a fun time.
So you clinched the Big 12 in the NCAA tournament that year. I think you pitched against like Bryant or Albany. Which one was it?
It was Bryant.
Bryant.
So Arkansas, Bryant, and Wichita State came to Manhattan, and Manhattan, it's such an advantage being
home
because you just have all K-State fans there.
And you pitched against Bryant. You threw really well. Had a great game. You guys roll through the regional into the super regional where you play Oregon State, who over the past 20 years has had one of the best programs ever. You're starting, what was that, game one?
Game one against Oregon State.
Yeah, you start game one of the super regional against Oregon State, and it's on ESPN. I don't know, just what's that feel like?
Oh, it was terrible. So, I mean, it was, yeah, it's a big, I mean, it's fun. It's everything. It's nervous. It's the best thing ever. But Mike Clement told this pretty funny, but when I came out of the Oregon State game, I think we were down 2-0, and I threw pretty well, and they took me out in the 6th or 7th inning, and I remember Mike Clement said, "How you feeling?" I said, "I'm so glad that's over." and Mike Clement's like, "That's not what you want to hear from your ace." but I mean, I was happy I threw well.
Yeah, you made one mistake.
I made one mistake.
You made one mistake to Michael Conforto.
Yeah, he took my plus curveball over the train tracks on an 0-2 count.
Yeah, you hung one to Conforto, and he hit it a mile for the only 2 runs that you gave up.
Yeah.
Well, and then you guys got so close.
We got so close.
So you lose that game.
No, we won that game.
Or no, you won that game. But then you
Kivett
lose.
Kivett hit a triple with like 2 outs.
That's right.
And we won it in the 9th. So
You won it in the 9th.
Kivett was awesome.
Kivett was awesome. It was a rally. It was a late rally.
Or 10th inning?
10th inning, maybe. And then, but you lose the next one. Then you go to the deciding game, game 3, which is another great game.
Yeah.
And Michael Conforto made a great catch in left field and a throw at the home plate to get a guy out at home. But what was it like being that close to the College World Series?
I remember crying after the game a bit, and I don't cry. And according to you, I don't care about winning. But
Who said that? I never said you.
you
didn't
said at
care
the
about-
beginning. But it was.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
I said you don't obsess over sports. The
I
way
don't
do.
obsess, but I got pretty emotional after that. I remember I was warming up in the bullpen in that game because they told me if we take the lead, we're bringing you in, and so I was ready to go if we would have got ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that'd have been tough. That was tough.
You signed with the Tigers after that year. You played really well that first year of pro ball. What was it like to put on a Tigers uniform?
I felt like I deserved to be there. I was a little bitter. I kind of wish we would have, made the World Series, and I wish I would have had more of us. I would have signed for more because I felt like I deserved it. Starting for 2 years, on a good team that won the Big 12.
Right.
So, I mean, it was a lot of fun. I was kind of sick of baseball after that. You just because you do it for 4 years and you think, and all of a sudden, making the going any higher becomes really hard.
After college, now guys are playing baseball as a career, and you get into that mode, and you're tired from 4 years of playing. Where's your mindset at about the game of baseball at that point?
I remember just thinking, I don't want to be doing this for 3 or I don't want to have this, minor league career for 3 or 4 years. I want to do something. I want to do something well, and try to climb up the ladder fast, kind of like Iggy did. You know, Iggy had what he did was kind of what I would like to do. You know, find your way up the ladder quick but yeah, I didn't want to have you just don't make any money, and that's the thing. Is if I would have been paid, if I would have had a signing bonus or something, it would help.
Yeah, you do it all for the money.
I would, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, what was it like getting cut?
It was kind of a relief.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, oh, now I don't have to. Now it's not on me. You know, it was against my. Getting cut from the Tigers was not fun, but it's also kind of a relief. It's like, okay, that's, you know, it wasn't like I did it on my own accord. It was somebody did it for me, and that's, you know, that's okay. That's much easier than just quitting.
Uh-huh. Did you ever have any arm troubles, or like how's the body feel today?
I did have some. I had like a pinch or something in my elbow, so I never felt. But every pitcher has stuff like that,
right?
And
but like, can you go out and play catch and stuff now and be all right?
I can play catch. You know, sometimes things. You know, you have more aches than you did though.
Yeah, we all do.
We all do.
Well, Joey, the way we end every episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is with the 5 big questions. So, first question is, who's your all-time favorite teammate?
I always like the catchers. So they're, you know, like the catchers at Iowa Central were, you know, like Taylor Peterson was always a great guy, and then Blair DeBoer at Kansas State. I always felt bad for the catchers. I just felt like they had a terrible job, and I always felt bad that, you know, they would catch your bullpen. So yeah, the catchers are always my favorite.
Well, and you don't even mention your cousin Patrick. He probably caught you more than
Patrick,
anybody.
Yeah, got Patrick and John.
Yeah. Jeez, and Neil. What about Neil?
And
Neil.
Well, what's one memory that you have from your sports career? It doesn't have to be baseball, but from playing sports that reminds you of everything that you love about sports.
Oh, I don't know. Just I like it when guys in baseball games, you know, like the guy who when they come through the order, they get the big hit, and like I always like how baseball, it's everybody, you have to step when you get your chance to step up, and seeing guys step up and get the big hit. I always like that.
You mean like right guy, right spot type thing?
Yeah, like your guy in your guy batting eighth will, you know, get the game winning hit.
Yeah,
I always like seeing that kind of stuff.
Well, that was kind of the story of your guys' high school state championship game, or that tournament.
Yeah,
it was like the bottom of the order guys, the Thomas Kestons, the Nick Clarks, Billy Mann. Those guys had a bunch of big hits.
Yeah, you get your bottom of the order on, and then all of a sudden you got your, you know, the top of the lineup, and it's like, okay, here we go.
Right.
That's when things get fun.
Yeah, and then the dugout's really fun at that point. What's the flip side of that then? What's maybe you mentioned this earlier, but one play, one game that still nags at you?
Well, yeah, I mentioned the dropped football pass. There's some starts in college I had where I just didn't want to be there, and it's just hard to get out of the first inning. And those, and then they're just stat killers for the rest of the year. It's like you put up you give up 5 or 6 runs in the first or second inning, and you get taken out, and then you just feel terrible for the rest of the week.
That is the worst.
It's the worst.
Yeah, your ERA never recovers. Even if you have like 3 or 4 starts in a row that are really good, it's like that one outing.
Yeah, like my senior year, like my ERA is like under 2 if you take away like 2 starts. You know, it's just you get a couple bombs in there.
Yeah, I remember you had a run there your senior year where you had like I think you shut out Texas Tech, complete game, and then you had a run of like 3 or 4 in a row that were really, really good.
Cal Poly.
Missouri, yeah. Was it Cal Bakersfield early in the year hurt your ERA, I feel like? Well, that was your junior year.
Yeah, there's I don't know, there were some bombs. 40 degrees and cold. You just don't. When you're on
the road, when you're on the road for baseball or any sport, what's your go-to fast food meal?
I like Wahlburger or Whataburger.
Whataburger.
From Texas. That was always, anytime we were in Texas, I always wanted to go to Whataburger. Those are good.
Did you, when you were growing up, like, who were your sports heroes growing up?
Joe Mauer and Torrey Hunter. That was a highlight of playing for the Tigers. So they had a really like star-studded lineup in 2013. So they had Torrey Hunter, Joe Nathan,
Miguel Cabrera,
and I played with Verlander, his younger brother, Ben Verlander. So like, you know, that Tigers had a really good team. I think they had made the World Series twice, 2 times in a row then. But no, meeting Torrey was awesome because he was exactly what you'd want it. You know, he has so much charisma.
What did he say to you?
How you doing, man?
Did you meet Al Kaline too?
Al Kaline would drive around on a golf cart
at spring training.
Yeah, Jim Leland was the manager.
Oh, that's cool.
And I played with his son Pat. Pat would bring a bunch of beer on the bus, and he was a good time.
Pat's a good guy.
Yeah.
Final question here, then, Joe, is what's the best advice you've ever received?
This comes from my high school coach Joe Shanks.
Oh yeah,
and he said, "What's the best pitch in baseball?" And he said, "It's a strike."
Words of wisdom from Joe Shanks. It is good advice. I mean, sometimes we try to overcomplicate things and, you know, keep it simple. Well, you got 2 kids, two girls. I got 1. What's some fatherly advice for me and for Neil?
I think kids figure things out. You know, like I was telling Andy about potty training. Like they're gonna learn how to go to the bathroom at some point. Like, so it's no use to try to force them to learn how to use it.
So this is a laissez-faire approach to fatherhood.
Yeah, kids are not like dogs. They will, you know, they can learn things.
All right.
They're better than dogs, you know.
Yeah, we're pro-human in this family.
Right.
Neil, anything else to add?
I got nothing.
What was it like for you guys watching the game on ESPN? Was that the most nervous you've ever been watching a baseball game?
So no, because I wasn't there. So the Oklahoma game was the one that I was most nervous for. That one, for whatever reason, by the super regional level game, it was like, I can't believe Joey's even pitching in this game.
It was all gravy.
It was all gravy at that point.
Right.
Like, it would have been great for you to make it to the College World Series, but even the fact that like you were on ESPN, and actually once you got past the first couple of innings, I was like, okay, he's not like, he's throwing well, he's fine, he's got this. The Oklahoma game was the one for me that was the most nervous I think I'd ever been. Before that, it probably would have been the state championship game against Dyersville Beckman.
Yeah.
But it was gravy at the super regional game. And like, you breezed through the first couple of innings, which made it easier to stomach.
Right. I want to add to that. Yeah,
Andy here.
Joey, we were all on pins and needles, you know, way more probably than even you were. And I think I had a chance to see a couple of your games, and the Oklahoma game in particular, like, I think of as being just one of the best experiences at a baseball game I probably will ever have in my entire life. And you know, if you ever go to like a sleepy Major League Baseball game and you kind of wonder like, why is this a big deal? Why do people pay, you know, $52 for seats? Well, the reason is because like baseball can actually be very thrilling. And like in Manhattan, Kansas, on a Saturday afternoon.
Well, we were pulling big crowds then towards the end of the year.
The place is packed, and it matters to the local community. And there's guys from Kansas and Iowa. Your catcher was from Manhattan, I think.
Yeah, he's from Manhattan.
That grow up there, and like they know the people. And then like for us, like our brother is on the mound. It's just electric. And so I think that probably will be one of the best baseball experiences I've ever had.
Well, and Andy, I remember between innings, you know, Joey's, you know, first inning he doesn't give up a hit. Second inning he doesn't give up a hit. Third inning he doesn't give up a hit. And we're jumping up and down. Like, you know, I think everybody's excited, but we were, as a family, high-fiving, hugging, you know, that kind of thing. That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
I think with so Dad has the mic, but I think Kansas State kind of felt like an adopted child to Iowa State as far as the baseball program. I remember Dad thinking like that. This could have been This could be the Iowa State baseball program.
Yeah, it's unfortunate Iowa State would have dropped their program, but when I was at Iowa State, Kansas State was the cellar dweller, and then to go back and see what they had done to their program in those 20, 30 years since I had left was amazing. To think that Iowa State could have done the same thing. But I kind of want to give my perspective. I went out to the Super Regionals, and I watched Joey pitch against Oregon State, and I knew he had the first start. And so I flew out there early and I toured the field and I toured the town and I saw the stadium and stuff, and I said, this is where Joey will start. And Joey, you and I may even went to breakfast one of those days.
Well,
but
we went out to eat after the game, and Dad and I both thought we were going to make the World Series.
Yeah, we thought that we were going to make the World Series. I mean, we can win one of the two. But then I flew home. No, I stayed for the second game when we just got pounded. And then I flew home, and Neil and I watched the third game on ESPN. And to watch Neil during that game was hilarious. Neil was, of course, he was keeping stats. And every time something would go wrong, he'd throw the pen. And then, do you still have that stat book, Neil?
Probably somewhere.
Well, anyway, it's different watching it on live at the field than it is on TV. You're more relaxed, I think, watching it live at the field at the stadium than you are on TV, because you're in control, I think, of your emotions at the stadium. But on TV, it's just you're not in control of what's going on, and it's a lot more nervous. And weren't you guys watching with Grandma Dar one of those games too?
I did not watch with Grandma Dar. I watched it that last game with
Grandma
Mike
Flattery.
and Dan Nielsen. So I watched it with.
Grandma Flattery was here. I remember I couldn't quite freak out like I wanted to freak out during the game because of that.
Well, what was amazing about playing on ESPN was like a buddy of mine was waiting for his flight, and he told me he said he was waiting for his flight, just watching me pitch on TV.
Yeah.
In like Chicago, and he said that was just that was quite the experience.
I remember. Well, go ahead, Neil.
Well, no, you go ahead. I had something else I wanted to bring up.
Well, I was going to bring up that why you say you couldn't quite freak out, but watching Joey's games, because I think I kept book for every one of your starts your junior and senior year, and I still have the book. But when I was so keyed up for all those games, and when somebody would walk into the room while I was watching you pitch and things weren't going well, I was very surly.
Yeah, and one other thing from that senior year that I remember was Joey pitching at Iowa when I was there.
Oh, that's right.
And
pitched against what's his name from Norwalk?
Dermody.
Dermody.
And I roomed with a baseball player at the time, and my whole hallway was filled with baseball players. So I think Dom, the coach of Iowa at the time, gave the scouting report on Joey, and it wasn't all that favorable. But then I guess maybe Ricky Sanquist is like, no, Joe, he's got good stuff. Like, because maybe your stats weren't that great coming into the game a little bit. And but then I think you like shut him down, or I don't know how you pitched pretty well against him though.
I don't think we won, but I remember what I remember about that series was I remember Ricky Sanquist coming in, and he actually threw really well against. I think he threw a couple shutout innings, and I was like kind of happy that Ricky did well.
Well, I remember there was an error. There was an error in that Iowa game, and it drove me nuts. It drove me nuts. And then there was another play that should have been an error, and they called it a hit. And I was so mad about that because I was watching it on my phone. I was at a bachelor party in Chicago. I was at Ryan Kim's bachelor party. That's why I wasn't at the game, because I was at Wrigley. It was a Friday. It was a blustery Friday.
I remember my roommate too was looking at a family picture of ours, and he's like, "Let me guess which brother is the one pitching against us tomorrow night." And it was he thought like the one who looked the coolest was the brother pitching baseball at Kansas State. So it was Andy, because Andy looked really cool in the picture.
One thing about that trip too is, I'm excited to go back to Iowa, but nobody on the team is.
Yeah.
So like anything everybody can kind of tell I'm excited to play in my home state. And so, but anything that goes wrong that trip, it's like, oh, Flattery, Iowa's a terrible,
I haven't been paying attention to the full interview here, but I looked forward to the Big 12 tournaments that 2 years in Oklahoma City. Did you guys mention this at all?
We have not.
Well, and that was, that's like your tournaments when you're a kid or in high school or little league, and you get all those 10, 12 teams coming into the to Oklahoma City. The Baylors, the A&Ms, the Missouris, and watching them huddle and then watching the games that it's like a tournament. So you've seen all these teams gathered around, and it was, you talk about a nice field. The Brickyard in Oklahoma City is really neat, and it was hot that first weekend, but that was fun. And Tim, I think you were.
I went down there.
Yeah,
Hung
you
out
went
with
down
Rich Dalrymple.
Yeah, that's right, Rich Dalrymple.
He runs PR for the Chicago or the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah,
Jerry Jones' is right hand man.
Yeah, you and him were buddies.
Oh, we were buddies.
Tim can always sniff out the people like.
Well, no, he was. We were hung out with them all weekend.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were mooching off.
But the
them or
Big 12
anything.
tournament was really impressive, and it's unfortunate that we'll probably see the demise of the Big 12 and that go away. But that was really good baseball in Oklahoma City.
Any parting shots here, Joe?
No, I don't have any.
Oh, here's
anything
Hans
more.
Nielsen
Well,
back on the pod.
I just stepped into I'm the grandpa here, but
Grandpa, our podcast knows you. You've been on the pod.
I know it. I just stepped into this, so I don't know if you've got into this, but Joey, your dad's the all-time strikeout leader for Iowa State. He's got a license plate to prove it. what I'm wondering about is St. Ed's strikeouts, because I watched your dad strike out 18 Bancroft players, and there's 21 in a 7-inning game. There's 21 batters. Struck out 18. Joey steps up against Clarion. Would you believe it? And I was there. Struck out 19, and I think he hit a home run on the top on the roof of the school. And
I know.
But has anybody? Have you talked about how many strikeouts? Who's the school record for strikeouts?
No, I think that's a great point, Grandpa. The stats guy, Grandpa, walks in. I think Dad probably has the all-time record for most in a career.
Yeah,
but 19 in a game.
That's got to
be the.
That's got to be the record. Yeah.
Unless Jake's lot broke.
Well,
or
don't
something.
you have 19? I think I had one game. You had one game for 19.
Oh, okay.
So that ties it.
Yeah.
I think I had 17 against Clear Lake. Yeah, you can't trust the Fort Dodge Messenger. How many home runs did you hit in your high school career?
I think close to 20.
I wonder who has the St. Ed's record for most home runs. Or Jonathan.
Jonathan might have me by one or two.
How many did you hit, Neil?
I had one against Webster City off Johnny Davis. I think it's
nice.
still going.
All right. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. We can cut this off, but I got to tell the story about going to at the Big 12 tournament. Our hotel is right across the street from the Thunder.
Oh, you got to tell this story. Yeah.
So this is awesome. This is just so as loyal Moonlight Graham listeners know, we have a connection to the Collison family.
Yeah, Michael Collison.
Michael Collison and Nick. Well, anyways, Nick was playing the Lakers
in the playoffs.
So this is the good Thunder team with Durant, Westbrook, and anyway. So they're playing the Lakers, and our hotel in Oklahoma City is right across the street. And I think Dad tipped me off that Engler and Collison were down there. So I texted Engler saying, what are you guys doing? I heard you're down. And they said, and John's like, are you like, you're down here? Okay, well, we can get you a ticket. So I meet them at a bar, and I literally just walk out at my hotel room and we go to the game. And when I get to the game, I say, guys, I really appreciate you letting me come with you. And so I go up to the concession stand to go buy everybody beer. And somebody from the Thunder asked if I would like to do a layup contest after the first quarter. So I'm already in disbelief, I walked out my hotel room and went to an NBA playoff game, and now I'm getting asked to do a layup contest. So I'm very nervous for this. So Engler and I go down to the court after the first quarter, and like Kobe and Meta World Peace are like right next to us, and they're big, you know.
Oh yeah,
those guys are big, and I go out there and John's like telling me to dunk it, but because you have to like go down the end of the court, do a puzzle, and like come back and make a layup and win. But my dunking is not. I mean, I can dunk it, but I'm not like clutch, as we know.
You're not,
I'm 1 for 5.
You're 1 for 5 on dunking.
So I end up doing a layup, and I win it. But yeah.
When I was gonna ask this earlier, when was the first time you dunked it?
I think sophomore year in high school.
Do you remember, like in practice or?
St. Ed's had one of the hoops is a little bit lower than the rest, and I think I dunked in that hoop.
When's the last time you dunked it?
Not since I've been a father.
All right. That was a good story. Thanks for coming on the pod, Joe.
Yep. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Tim.
So that wraps up our interview with Brother Joe, the prodigal brother, returning to the podcast. But let's get down to business. We got to talk Cosner. And guys, I wish I had better news for you, but I had a lot of failed attempts at Cosner over the last couple of weeks. I think the closest we've gotten to Cosner so far is listener John Schulte, shout out John, DMing us on Sunday saying Cosner apparently is sitting next to the Fox booth because Troy Aikman and Joe Buck just mentioned that they were pretty close to Cosner. So that was as close as we got to Cosner was a listener DMing us that the football game they was watching, that Cosner was at it. Do have a couple of irons in the fire. Do still have a couple of arrows in the quiver that we haven't played yet, haven't shot yet. So there is still hope. There's always hope with Kevin Cosner. The other thing I would like to point out was, man, I thought last week's episode with Reed Sinnott would be a little more popular. You know, Reed's second time on the pod. I thought the interview that Tommy and I did with Reed last week, I thought that was a really good and fun interview. Reed, he got on the active roster for the Dolphins last week. Obviously, Reed was the practice squad quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, Johnston, Iowa native. He made an appearance on the active roster while Tua Tagovailoa was out injured. I was like, man, this one's going to blow up. I thought this would blow up. And frankly, a little disappointed in the download numbers, probably about half of what I would have expected. So I don't know. I guess, if you skipped over that episode, maybe go back and give the Reed Sinnott interview a little bit of a listen. Give it a chance. If you've heard from Reed once, this second episode is a totally different episode. I think you guys will enjoy it if you haven't listened to it. But frankly, I thought we'd do a little bit better. But there's always this week, and there's always going to be growth, and the brightest days of this podcast are always looking forward and never looking back. So this week, it's another week. It's going to be a great week. It's going to be a great day. So you have a great day out there, Moonlighters. Thank you for listening. A special thanks to our Moonlight team, Brendan Gargano, the most talented podcast artwork guy in the industry. Thank you, Brendan. Brian Sandvig, the loyal producer of the pod that does everything behind the scenes. Brian Sandvig, thank you very much. Tommy Griffin, the trusted co-host, who's there writing up our summaries each and every week. Thank you, Tommy. Andy and Neil, the Flattery brothers. Thank you guys for helping me book each and every episode. And thank you, the Moonlighters out there, for listening this week. Have a great week. Love hearing from you guys. Thank you for listening. You are the lifeblood of this show.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.